welcome back to the Triple Threat Podcast. My name is William and Ishan, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of an NFC South draft breakdown. A little late, apologies for that. We've had exams, and now we're in the summer, so it's time for the daily uploads, well, whenever possible. So make sure you click the bell down below, give us a little subscribe. We're getting close to 100. We're getting there. I think we've gotten 4 subscribers since we've done the live shows, so thank you guys. It means a lot. So if you're watching this, just give us a subscribe. Doesn't mean a lot to you, but it means a lot to us. So that's all we can ask for. So let's get straight into this, right, Ishan? Unless you got anything else to say.
No, you covered everything. One thing, just be tuned for some content on the website, which is in the description below. But let's get started. We'll be doing some draft grades on the NFC South today. And we will start off with my Atlanta Falcons and Kyle Pitts at 4. Which, do you want to change the fit or need now that Julio is traded?
No. So this is I did my draft grades based on 3 characteristics. Value, which is going to be the consensus ranking of that player compared to where they actually went. Player grade, which is my opinion on the player compared to where they actually went. And then fit or need, which accounts for obviously positional need positional need and then fit in the system. So that's how I grade my players. And let's get straight into this with Kyle Pitts here. So he was the consensus number 2 player in the draft, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it. So value is not off in the slightest. My player grade him, I had him as 9 overall. So a little bit of a discrepancy there, but 4 is where a lot of people thought he would go. That 4 to 6 range was really where he was locked down to go. So there's not a discrepancy in value. The real problem comes in this with the terms of fit and need. And we covered this a lot in the last episode. It's just the direction of this team doesn't align with the selection of the draft pick. And yes, it could be seen as a move to get publicity or celebrity or fan intriguement, which the Falcons desperately need. Like, if we're being honest, the Falcons desperately need some more fan interaction. And Kyle Pitts certainly provide that more than a defensive player. Maybe not as much as a quarterback. Maybe Justin Fields would have been more of a fan draw. And I probably would have been a better pick in my opinion. But they took Kyle Pitts, and let's talk about how he'll fit in the Falcons offense real quick. So I gave it a C as a fit and need. So talk about the fit for your Falcons.
Yeah, now that Julio's out, Kyle Pitts was the big, athletic, versatile freak. Oh, did I mention he's a versatile weapon? That people compared, despite playing tight end, to Megatron, to Julio Jones, to the DK Metcalfs, to the big athletic freaks that have been dominating at the wide receiver position. And since Kyle Pitts produced the majority on the outside and kind of in the red zone, he could go outside opposite Calvin Ridley. But at the same time, the year before, we gave up a second rounder, right? Yeah, second rounder for Hayden Hurst, who will be playing on the inside as like an inline tight end, but he's a receiving threat, and he's pretty good too. And then you go out and get just basically a guy that ceiling looks like Darren Waller when you have Justin Fields available for you at number 4, when you could have even traded down, when there was the best offensive tackle prospect we've ever seen, even though we don't even need no lineman. We could have, dropped down Farley, Surtain, Parsons. There are so many other options that I would have rather had than Kyle Pitts. So I just was not a fan of the pick, and I'm just not sure why we draft a tight end to play receiver basically when one of the best receivers in college football history, Jamar Chase, was right there for the taking.
Yeah, and that leads perfectly into what I was going to say. He does his best work as an outside receiver. When he's lined up as an inline tight end, his blocking is average, and his receiving grade is significantly worse when he's lined up in line. So I see him with Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is going to be really valuable for Kyle Pitts because Hurst can take that interior dirty role They can play 12 personnel, and they can line Kyle Pitts outside like Jared Cook or Darren Waller at times. But people already talk about Kyle Pitts being in that top three of tight ends of the Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller. But he's not even close to Darren Waller or to Kelsey. Not even in terms of blocking or receiving. Waller is Pitts' upper echelon potential, but already just a much better inline player. So he's probably going to be playing mostly receiver at the pro level. And yeah, he's a great receiver, but there's a better receiver in this draft class. If you wanted to take a direct replacement for Julio, or you just wanted to have some more star power, Jamar Chase would have been a better pick here. But obviously the best selection in this, in my opinion, would have been trading back. The question of finding someone who's willing to trade back will be a little bit harder to do, but you could have gotten a second round pick at least in return, I think.
And honestly, Fields was there. San Fran took Trey Lance. And let's say we trade back to
even just to the Dolphins. The Dolphins traded a first round pick to move up to 6.
Yeah, the Dolphins. There's even Chicago. There's even making a deal with like the Giants. There are definitely a lot of options there. Maybe the Giants would want Penei Sewell, and so they take him there. But I was just not a big fan of this pick, and especially, yes, the value was good. It was just not the move that Atlanta should have made. We need to have an established direction, and this just increases the ambiguity that we have. So, was not a big fan of Kyle Pitts' pick. You weren't either. But let's move on to Richie Grant. You were not too high on Richie Grant. I haven't seen too much of him, but from what I've seen, he's kind of a do-it-all. Not really one specific strength, but less weaknesses than some of the other safeties. And I like this pick given what he could potentially do under Dean Pease. But Trayvon Merrick was still there, and I believe Azeez Ojulari was there. I believe Asante Samuel was there. So while I don't hate the Richie Grant pick, I feel like there were some better options for sure.
If I'm mistaken, I believe Grant was actually the first safety taken off the board. He was my safety number 5. He's a solid player, and that was my knock on him. There wasn't anything exceptional that stood out to me in this game. He's just a fairly well-rounded player. I had him behind Cisco, Merrick, Elijah Molden, and Jamar Johnson. So I had him pretty far down there, and he was pretty solidified as my safety 5. I didn't have him moving ahead of any of the guys above him. And I just didn't love the value of this pick. I can't hate the player. The player, he's solid. I have as a third-round player. He can come in and be an immediate contributor to this team. I don't hate the pick. I just don't love the value here. And when you're sending the 40th selection, there's a lot of better directions you could have gone with this pick, and I think that getting a solid safety was not the best they could have done, and they probably could have gotten him in the second round or in the third round. You saw Andre Cisco go top of the third. He was my safety number 1. You saw Ardarius Washington go undrafted. There's just Jamar Johnson fell super late in the draft. These safeties were not valued at all, and getting one this early and this much of a reach is not my favorite pick, but I can't hate the player too much though. He's gonna be solid.
Yeah, you see, when we traded back with Denver so they could take Javonte Williams, I was a little disappointed. But then the draft kind of fell on our odds. Azeez Ojulari, a guy that I really liked, who had production, who has the athleticism. He's actually from Atlanta or Marietta, I believe. So I really, really wanted that pick. Asante Samuel Jr., I think you gave him a first-round grade? Or
Close. I think I might have. I'll check with you on that.
Early second, late first. Obviously, son of Asante Samuel. Big fan of him. One of the few bright spots on FSU this year. And then, if you wanted a pick that was better value, Trayvon Merrick, who PFF actually had as their 17th best player, could have been a better value pick here. And I would have disliked it less. But Richie Grant, I don't hate. I think he does have potential, especially under Dean Pease. And so I'm excited to see him come in and replace a very battered safety room.
Yeah, I had Samuel at 38, so right outside the first round, but as a really, really solid player.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to a guy that did you do a top 150?
Yes, I did.
So outside of your top 150, but 48th on most consensus boards, a guy that went from a third or fourth round prospect basically a month before the draft to a guy that could go first round, and the guy that I was seeing in the first round in some mocks out of Michigan, Jalen Mayfield. I do like the pick. We've had some trouble with depth in our offensive line. And as Jake Matthews is getting a little bit older, as Caleb McGarry is still a little uncertain, I think that Mayfield will be a very solid contributor, just rotating through the offensive line.
Yeah, he's a very much of a project player. He only played 2 games last season, the Minnesota game, Michigan State. He didn't play particularly well, gave up 1 sack, 1 hurry. Uh, but what he does is he's a very athletic player for his size. He plays a lot faster than someone 320, but his technique is not very fundamentally sound in pass protection. He doesn't win with smarts and anticipation. He's really just a raw player, and that's why I saw him as a fourth round player, as someone that you can develop. But I didn't see him as a immediate contributor due to that. He's played most of his career at right tackle. He played a freshman year at left tackle, so he's got some versatility there. But I think there's a reason why they moved him to right tackle. He's just really raw, and it'll take a lot to develop him. And I don't know. I mean, granted, Atlanta does have the time to develop him, but he's we'll have to see though. Very toolsy. The value isn't bad at round 3. Just a little bit before. I mean, the value is great actually. The value is really good because he was consensus number 48, so he was very high up there. I just thought he was a little bit more of a developmental player, and I had him at round 4, right outside of my top 150.
Yeah, so just moving on to a couple other players that we selected. Darren Hall out of San Diego State, cornerback. Drew Dahlman out of Stanford, he's a center. We got both of these guys in the fourth round. Hopefully Dahlman can come in and replace what we lost out of Alex Mack. Then the next 3 Taquan Graham, oh god, Adagumbo Ogundeji, and Avery Williams were all defensive players that can hopefully make their way into the rotation, just because we have a very injury-prone and pretty depleted defense overall. So I think that if we get some quality in the later rounds, I'll be happy. And then our very last pick, Frank Darby, was one pick that I did like a lot. Kind of a bigger receiver out of Arizona State who's been producing some good receiver prospects. N'Keal Harry's not good in the NFL as of late. So I'm excited to see what he does, as he could maybe work his way in as a third or fourth option to Matt Ryan late in his career.
I was a big fan of Frank Darby. I had him. I mean, right in my top 150 at 134. It's been a while since I've watched the receivers. I watched all 30. I think I watched 30 receivers this year, and he was very impressive to me. Just he stood up on tape a little bit, and he is that Arizona State system. A lot of go balls, a lot of short routes. Really covered that go route. He really was a deep threat. He's very athletic, very freakish. He played 3 games this season, a little bit hampered this year, but in his 2 previous seasons, averaged 20 yards per catch. Really impressive stuff right there. You would have looked for a breakout season this season, but obviously it wasn't to be with the injuries. But honestly, it's a good player. 7th round pick, take a flyer on someone who's got some high upside. I think he can be a solid player and a good deep threat for this team, because Matt Ryan can definitely still sling it. So a good 7th round pick.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to Carolina, number 8 here. This definitely was a little bit of a surpriser, just because I think I had him as my cornerback 3. You had him as your cornerback 3. Still a first round talent, but that was J.C. Horn. And while he is a good player, and while I liked him as a player, he's good in man coverage, he's pretty strong, decently fast. I just think that there was Sertan there was Farley there, even Parsons. There are some better defensive options on the board at 8.
Yeah, this is a very awkward spot for them, and what I found extremely surprising is the fact that they didn't want to trade out of that selection with Minnesota, who tried to come up to 8.
Mm-hmm.
Very publicized that trade rumor. The video of the Panthers war room with the Vikings, Spielman's on the phone with them. The fact that, I mean, consensus board, J.C. Horn is 13. They would have gotten either Horn or Surtain, or even Farley, who was my cornerback 1, at that 14th selection when they would have been picking with Minnesota. Gone back, got some assets. But what this shows you is a clear intent on their defensive scheme. They're going to be running a lot of press coverage, clearly indicative of the selection. If they were going to run zone coverage or going to run some some sort of zone coverage in the Seattle scheme, the easiest selection would have been to take Surtain. But this is clearly a selection based on their future schematics on defense. And I like the fact that they're trying to go for schematics. So I'm not too terribly upset about the pick. I just think it's a crime that they didn't try and get some future assets. And then before we move on to the rest of the Panthers, I want to talk about a UDFA the Falcons had, a Javion Hawkins out of Louisville. So he had some off the field concerns, but he is explosive, and I would not be surprised if he got a significant load of the Falcons running back workload this season. So just a name to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. Well, moving on to a player that you really liked and that I was surprised to see fall this far, Terrace Marshall Jr. Kind of last year, all the spotlight was on Jamar, on Justin Jefferson, and then the spotlight kind of faded from LSU this year after they did not have that great of a season. But Terrace Marshall Jr. was still a good player, solid red zone target. What do you like about him?
Man, I hate this pick. Because you know who had the 60th pick, the pick right after them?
New Orleans?
New Orleans. You know who was going to take Terrence Marshall with that pick? Allegedly New Orleans was going to.
No.
So when I saw that name come off the board there, man, I was crying. That was awful. Because, man, Terrence Marshall is great. And, Carolina, they replaced this, he went to Curtis Samuel instantly. Because what Terrence Marshall has done has been great. Because he is great in contested catch, he is great against man and zone, and he is versatile. So during that championship run, he was the third stringer. He came back from injury, battled back, and played great at the end of the season in those big pro bowl games and in the playoffs. He was really impressive. I think he had 3 or 4 touchdowns against Oklahoma. And what he does great is he works the middle of the field exceptionally well. And that's my kind of prototypical receiver, is being able to win over the middle. Because that's where your money is made. That's where you're going to catch the first downs. It's bread and butter. Every play you could go over the middle. And he just is exceptional at that intermediate passing game. I know I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Saints fan. That's the passing game I've been accustomed to watching since I've been born, since I've been watching football. But that is my prototypical receiver. He's 6'3", 205, and runs sub 4'4". Granted, that's a pro day time, but he is explosive. He's athletic. He can catch everything. He's got an exceptional catch radius. Only concern is that he's got a little bit of a drop issue. Not too bad. He had a little bit of a high drop rate, but that's kind of can attributed to his workload and him trying to do too much with the ball, because he was really that only offensive weapon on that team last season. So maybe he was trying to do too much, trying to run before he caught the ball. But exceptional player and great in contested catch, and he's not the worst in forced tackles. So exceptional player, and I'm super annoyed that he went to the Panthers, especially one spot before the Saints.
Yeah, so I guess Marshawn Lattimore, Chauncey will have to do some research on this guy. Well, moving on, Brady Christensen from BYU. You get to pick a B. Just tell me a little bit about Brady Christensen and then Tommy Tremble and Chuba Hubbard for the next two picks.
Man, I don't want to seem like I gave this pick a B because if you account for fit and value, this might be an A minus kind of pick because Brady Christensen was the number one graded offensive tackle last season at BYU. Granted, you can attribute that to the lack of level of competition, but especially he gave up one sack, I think, against Peyton Turner in that Houston game. Was a little bit vulnerable in that game, and that was his best level of NFL competition. But he has been exceptional in both run and pass blocking. He has just been a stud at left tackle, and not to mention he is incredibly athletic, being in the 90th percentile in almost every single metric as an offensive tackle. He's 6'6", 300. He's got a little bit of some shorter arms, but you could easily see him kicking into guard and being an elite guard of the NFL. But I think it's worth putting him at tackle. He's already got great technique. He's athletic, and he's been playing at a high level for the past 2 seasons, being an anchor for Zach Wilson. Gave up only one sack this season and almost 700 snaps, and only gave up one last season and 900 snaps. So really impressive stuff right there. And only gave up 2 hurries this season. Only 2. Like, you compare that to Jalen Mayfield, who went ahead of him, gave up 1 in 2 games. So Brady Christensen is a really good pick, and I'd probably give this an A minus. Just working offensive line is always a good thing, and when you have a quarterback like Sam Darnold who needs some protection, never going to complain about that.
Yeah, hopefully Sam Darnold doesn't see ghosts in Carolina. But Tommy Tremble, tight end, Notre Dame, pretty solid pick. Solid value here. He was like an 85th ranked player by most consensus boards. I got him at 83. And then Chuba Hubbard, who was expected to do some big things in Oklahoma State this year, but was it injuries or was it just kind of like a down year?
It was. I think a lot of it can be. Whew,
And then
it's
COVID.
tough because he did not look good at all this season.
Yeah.
Uh,
Different player.
Because he was someone who was like, oh, why is everyone so low on Chuba Hubbard? He's the best back last season. I turned on the tape and was like, no, he just wasn't good at all this year. I tried digging in some research to see what was the cause of it, if maybe it was like an Alvin Kamara type thing where he had a nagging injury, but I couldn't find anything to attribute to that lack of production and just looking poor. So let's talk about Tommy Tremble first because, man, fast, 4'6" kind of guy, can jump out the gym, really athletic. He's worked over the middle, does a really good job intermediate, just a really good intermediate pass rating, and just a solid player. He's athletic, he's big, he's got some upside, but what he's really good at is blocking on the move. Like, he's a really good zone blocking kind of guy. He can get out in space, be aggressive, come out in front of a play, and just be a great zone blocker. Didn't have a lot of production in college. You can attribute that to the system, but man, he's got hustle. I'm not gonna say this at all, but like a George Kittle coming out of college, he's not gonna be George Kittle, not even close, nowhere near. But just trying to get to a comparison of someone who is dirty in the run game, but not yet developed in the passing game. I don't see him reaching a passing game like George Kittle, but he's got the tools and he's got the drive on the blocking side. And getting a blocking tight end in the 3rd round, you can't go wrong with that. He's got upside at the receiver position as well, so he lined up a quarter of his snaps outside in the slot. So don't be surprised to see him. Really good pick here. Carolina's had a solid draft after J.C. Horn, and J.C. Horn not even a bad pick himself.
Yeah, for sure. Davion Nixon, you really like this pick. Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, I gotta bring up my notes, but he's the big fella out of Iowa. Yeah, I like Davion Nixon a lot. So, he is fast as well. Not the strongest guy, but he's kind of be a speed rusher off the interior. Um, had some solid production in college, but I just think getting him where they did in the round 5, and I've had him as a round 3 kind of player. And if you look at the consensus board, I had him at 59. So really special to see him drop to 158. Not much more I can really add, just exceptional value and pretty solid positional need. And he's got a good run stuffing rate. I mean, he can take on blockers at an NFL level. I mean, he's a little bit on the smaller, lighter size, but actually he's not on the lighter side at all. He's 313, so he's just a big guy that can move quickly, and that's just kind of something that you don't see out of a lot of defensive linemen. He's explosive and he's got quick feet, and that's something that you can translate to the NFL level.
Yep, definitely a solid pick there. Some of the other ones: Keith Taylor, Shi Smith, Thomas Fletcher.
And Shi Smith's a name you're probably going to hear a little bit more about. I wasn't too impressed with him when I was watching film, but yeah, that's just because I didn't have him as a third rounder. I mean, getting him in round 6, I think, is a pretty solid selection.
Yeah. They took a long snapper out of Alabama, but it's Alabama, so
he's probably pretty good.
Yeah.
I've never watched the man. I mean, I've definitely watched the man watching Alabama, but I've never noticed him because he's a long.
Yeah, I've never explicitly watched him. And then Phil Hoskins, defensive tackle. So before we head over to New Orleans, let's take a look at the chat. What's up, fellas? From Africa Bambata. That's a DJ. Yeah, it's a famous DJ. What do you guys think about the player DN?
Yeah, he's a elite player, man.
Yeah, man.
A DN out of where did he go to college? Ball State.
Yeah, Ball State.
Yeah, a big fan of his. He's a big guy in the interior. It can cause a lot of havoc in the middle. So, DN, big up DN.
Yeah, DN was good. Candace was good too. Willis.
Is he Sagandis? If I'm
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. All right.
He was solid too. But yeah, this is. Yesterday we had Logan Paul. Now we have DN today. So things can switch up on you pretty quickly.
So let's move on to the Saints real quick, right? Oh, and by the way, if you want to hear any more about players, definitely leave it in the chat. We will go anywhere from Trevor Lawrence to Logan Paul to DN. So if you've got something, we'll answer it in the chat.
Yeah. So Peyton Turner over a guy like Azeez Ojulari was a little bit of a surprise to me. And you two, what were you thinking about the pick?
Surprising. I'll say that for sure. I like Peyton Turner. I'll be completely honest here. I was really high on him relative to the consensus. So I'm just trying to find my notes on him real quick because 32 teams. And okay, here we go. So I had him at 45, which was pretty high compared to the consensus where he was ranked at 69. Nice. So just the fact that he was definitely getting buzz as a first or second round player, and obviously the media doesn't have the knowledge that an NFL organization does about the value of a player. I do think it's a little bit of an over-selection though, but as a player, Peyton Turner is really impressive. He's a former basketball player. He's played interior, he's played exterior. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got athleticism, and he's got production. Really effective player. He had a little bit of an injury last season. Also, he dealt with some COVID situations after Houston, so he was limited to only really 4 games. But his production in those 4 games were really impressive. That versatility on that defensive line, you win championships in the defensive line, and that's really important for a team to really build in the trenches. So, as much as I think it's an overreach, the fit and need, it's a great selection, and he can play anywhere. They lost Craig Hendrickson. They're going to need another third down rusher. Especially if Marcus Davenport gets another injury, someone who can step up and take that job. They've also got a lot of players like Carl Granderson that can also play on the edge role. So building up a big brute force in the defensive line is never a bad thing for a defense. I believe it's now 8 of the last 9 selections the Saints have had in the first round has been on an offensive or defensive lineman. So that really tells you how they've tried to build this team, and that it's been effective in the past. And as I said before, I'm not going to doubt Jeff Ireland ever. Jeff Ireland has been consensus one of the greatest evaluators of talent in the draft. My only problem is in the past, I've been on board with his selections when they were made. Like when they picked Lattimore or Marcus Davenport or Ramczyk or Marcus Williams, like I was all on board on those picks, Traquan. But the next pick is, oh man, I did not like this pick.
Warner.
Dude, when I saw this, I about lost it. The fact that my boy went right ahead of him. I really wanted Terrence Marshall Jr., but Pete Werner. We got Zach Bond last year. He's more of an outside presence, more of an edge rusher, combo linebacker, plays outside linebacker. Pete Werner's an interior guy. A lot of good news about him coming out of Ohio State, but man, was not my favorite linebacker. I was praying for some JOK, and he got relatively close to the Saints. I don't know the exact number where he went, but I'm pretty sure he went in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. So, just really unfortunate to see him go there. And then, I don't know, I just really didn't like the pick. They were in a very unfortunate situation of where they were drafting. So, I think that if you look at it, they didn't have a lot of options, but I think they could have done a lot better than what they did. There was Kellen Mond available. I wouldn't have minded that at all. Joseph Asai out of Texas would be a great pick. Aaron Robinson trying to get some more cornerback help, but they were just really unfortunate situation for where they were at. Not a lot of players available at that selection, so I think they kind of got stuck where they were at. And my big take from this draft has been the Saints love to trade up, and their value has not always been exceptional in the past, as you know. The Saints trading up has always been met with, they had bad value. But when they do trade up, they get their player, and when they get their player, he's pretty good. And that's what they did with their next pick in Paulson Adebo. They traded up, and they got a guy who was a great player. Paulson Adebo, I was a little bit lower on him, but after doing some more research after the draft, Paulson looks like a great player. So, bring up some more numbers on him. Paulson Adebo real quick. He didn't play last season. He opted out. That was before the Pac-12 announced they would be playing. So, in his last season in 2019, he played exceptionally well in coverage, man and zone. I think he gave up some absurdly low number. He gave up a 58% completion percentage. He had great ball skills. He had 4 interceptions on the season. He played really, really well, and was, I think, a Pac-12 player of the season. I'm fairly sure. He also had 6 forced incompletions and 4 dropped interceptions. So he is in and around the ball. He's making plays. Very athletic, very quick in direction. He's got a 6'6" cone. A very impressive player, and I really like this pick. So they might have given up 2 third-round picks to get their guy, but they didn't get caught without a player they wanted, like they did in maybe the first or second round, where they had to reach on a guy that they had a little bit later. So Mickey Loomis, trade up. If Jeff Ireland hands you a name and he says this guy's good, don't wait for the rest of the board to fall, and then you get left with nothing and reaching for something that you can't get. Make the move. Go get your guys, because when you get your guys, it's worked out pretty well.
Couple of NFC championship games worked out very well.
Well, obviously the end result wasn't great, but they played well.
I'm feeling very confident today just because, the Hawks are playing Philly. I feel like we're going to take this win. But moving on, Ian Book, Notre Dame.
Not a fan of the pick at all. If we needed a 4th-string quarterback, we could have picked one up in the free agency. But, man, hearing Sean Payton rant and rave about Ian Book's kind of scary, because that could mean 2 things. Because Ian Book in college was like Drew Brees, but take away the accuracy and the anticipation, and then you're just left with the...
Isn't that like
you're taking away everything good with him. So he's played well in big games. He's got the mentality. He's a leader, but undersized quarterback that can't throw with anticipation at all. Like, no anticipation. But you hear all these coaches rave about Ian Book after the draft. It's like, do we actually have a good player in our hand? Because we could, and I don't want to sound like an idiot when I diss Ian Book because I hated Ian Book coming out. But, man, I knew what was happening. A lot of Saints reporters were reporting that they were going to take Ian Book. But it actually happened. And in the fourth round, not great value. He was 237 on the consensus. That's probably about where I had him as well. I only did a top 150 though. Just didn't like the pick. Really annoying. Could have had someone that would have contributed to the team rather than held a clipboard behind Trevor Siemian on the bench fighting for that third string quarterback job.
Yeah. Landon Young out of Kentucky.
This is actually a really interesting pick. He was a former 5-star, got offered at Alabama, went to Kentucky because he wanted to have a meaningful college career and like turn around a franchise. Played solid. I mean, this is a former 5-star. I'm pretty sure he was an all-freshman SEC player. I think Landon Young has been, I don't know why he's been thrown under the radar a lot. I didn't know much about him at all until I heard about him after the draft, but Landon Young is a very surprising player. Played some very solid football.
Yeah, 6'7", 321.
I mean, he was a former 5-star, offered at Alabama. He's a 95th percentile in speed, 97th in reps. I mean, this could be a sleeper. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, I didn't know anything about him until after the draft because I hadn't done any of my research. But gave up 1 sack in 700 snaps last season. 1 sack in 2019 on 750 snaps. Only 4 hurries that season. Just surprising to see him this low and this little talked about. So it could be a sleeper. One pick I was quite happy about.
Yeah, and then Kawan Baker, South Alabama receiver. Think about him?
Still don't know much about Kawan Baker, sadly enough, as a Saints fan. Probably won't make the roster. There's a lot of competition at the receiver spots. You've got Michael Thomas, you've got Traquan, you've got Marquez Callaway, you've got Juwan Johnson who's switching to tight end potentially. You've got Lil Jordan Humphrey, you've got obviously Deontay Harris, and not to mention some of the younger guys they've had coming up like what's his name? Emmanuel Butler. So there's gonna be a lot of competition at that receiver spot, and Kawan Baker's gonna have to really impress, but haven't done too much research on him yet.
So finally, Tampa Bay, they obviously won the Super Bowl. They retained all their starters, or almost all.
I think all of them.
All of them. A lot of good pieces on both sides of the ball. You're looking at Chris Godwin, obviously Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and then on defense, Devin White, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield Jr. But I feel like sometimes there were some leaky moments in the secondary. As good as Jamel Dean was, as good as Antoine Winfield Jr. was, I felt like maybe grabbing a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. here just to kind of bolster the cornerback position instead of Joe Tryon would have been a better idea, because this for sure was a reach in the first round.
A lot of people have him as a first rounder. He was building a lot of hype towards the end of the draft process. Personally, I hadn't really seen it when I watched the tape, but people were really blown away by Joe Tryon as a late first rounder. Was getting a lot of buzz, kind of like Peyton Turner, but kind of more so. I think it was actually getting more attention. Personally, I didn't see it in that 2019 season because he opted out last season. He had 9 sacks, 4 hits, 28 hurries. I mean, he had really solid production, but his pass rush run rate and his overall production just wasn't as much as some of the other elite pass rushers in this draft class. But he's got a lot of athleticism and skills and size as well. He's 6'5". Personally, I didn't see it as much as other people did. I had him at 137. I was really, really low on Joe Tryon as a fourth rounder, but I don't like the pick. I might be proven wrong instantly. He's gonna be in a really good system, a really good fit around him. Um, I think there's just a lot of other needs that could have gone with this team, solidifying offensive line, maybe bolstering secondary a little bit. A second safety next to Antoine Winfield probably would have been my ideal situation with the Trayvon Merrick or Andre Cisco there, but I can't hate the pick too much, but I'll give it a C plus.
Yeah, so moving on, they got Kyle Trask ahead of Kellen Mond.
Yep,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
three
he
picks
was.
ahead of him, or maybe just one pick ahead.
Yeah,
I think it was 3 picks. I think it was 3 picks.
Because Mond was 67 in Minnesota. So that was a little interesting. I was not a massive fan of that pick, especially when Mond was there. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about Kyle Trask, and because Bruce Arians has been raving about him.
It makes perfect sense. You think about the Bruce Arians quarterback, the guy that stands in the pocket and makes a throw. The Big Ben, the Carson Palmer, the Andrew Luck, just the big arm quarterback, well, not big arm, but just a big strong quarterback, stands at the pocket, doesn't care about pressure, and just throws the ball. And Kyle Trask is that. He makes sense. It's a good scheme fit. It makes sense for what Arians wants to do. But what surprises me about this is that this is an intent that Arians plans to stay after the Tom Brady era by trying to solidify himself an extra quarterback. And I thought this would have been the end of the line for Arians going back into retirement. I thought this would have only been a couple more years. But the fact that he's picked his quarterback out for the future, or potential quarterback out for the future, really just shows that he might be staying for the long haul, which I think is interesting for the division for certain.
Yeah, that definitely could be. We could see Kyle Trask, Matt Ryan until he's like 50, Ian Book, and Sam Darnold take over a division that once had Drew Brees, Jameis Winston.
Hey, we'll still have Jameis Winston, MVP right there.
Oh yeah, MVP right there. And then back when we had MVP Cam, MVP Matt Ryan. So things have definitely changed. But moving on, offensive lineman Notre Dame Robert Hainsey. A little bit of a reach here. You were not too fond of the pick, not great value, weren't too high on the player at this position.
Yeah, offensive line is a very difficult analysis. I had Hainsey kind of low, but I had him. There's just a lot of really good interior players, so I think that kind of hurt Hainsey just being in a system with such a lot of other good players on the offensive line at Notre Dame. I think the consensus Hainsey was kind of low, if you look at it. I'm pretty sure the rankings I was using to put my players had him at 250. Overall, I think consistency was 140 and 42. So, trying to pull up some more research notes I had on him, because it has been a while since the draft happened, and I don't want to leave you guys without any actual analysis. So, he went to the Senior Bowl, played all right, wasn't anything exceptional. He put up like really good numbers in college. He has some solid reaction time. I think that's probably his biggest strength, is that reaction time. He did give up 2 sacks from the interior and 13 hurries, which was really my biggest concern on him coming out. But overall, graded out was a very solid season for him. His arms are definitely on the smaller side at 32 inches. I think that's like bottom 3 percentile. His size is a little bit underwhelming at 6'4". So he's not a prototypical center, but I think he could probably do a fairly solid job in his zone running scheme, because he's actually not that fast at 5'2". So just an interesting player, solid production, but I don't see him translating to the NFL level with that size and with his not great athleticism, but the quick hand speed should definitely be a valuable asset for him.
Yeah, so there's one guy that you're telling me before the draft, watch out for. This is a really, really solid player here. He's under the radar, and that's Jalen Darden out of North Texas. Kind of a speedier guy, if I remember. You really like this pick here. Tell me about Darden.
Jalen Darden is your poor man's Jalen Waddle, and honestly, if you picked Jalen, I love Jalen Darden. It's unfair that he went to the Buccaneers. 4.3,
Love are going
yeah,
to rival
and then
teams.
they got what's his name, um, Minnesota guy last season, Tyler Johnson.
Oh yeah.
So Darn was number one in forced missed tackles at 23 last season. He was third in slot catches. He was fifth in deep catches. Exceptional 7.7 yards after the catch. Did a lot of versatile route running, but mainly worked deep. He only ran a 4.46, which was really surprising considering he looked like one of the fastest players on tape of any players in this draft. Um, Looked faster than Jalen Waddle, looked faster than a lot of players, but to be fair, Waddle didn't run particularly fast either. Um, just great production, great speed, incredible player. 1,200 yards last season, 19 touchdowns. He had 12 touchdowns last season. He's a producer, and he has some change of direction skills, which are only met by the elite of elite. He is an exceptional player. He's so much more than a deep threat. He is versatile. He can be a shifty kind of guy. Watch out for Jalen Darden. The problem is this receiving core is so stacked. He's going to be behind Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson that, man, it's going to be hard for him to get a game in this early. So I think it's going to be next season we're going to see him thrive, and Chris Godwin's arguably going to be out of there. Tyler Johnson is going to step up, and it'll be a lot different. Okay, we're back. Sorry, my streaming software had a little bit of a technical difficulty there, so I don't know how much of the last little bit was
I think it was
was cut off. I think it was just a little bit of that last bit, but just saying, I was saying Tyler Johnson and Jalen Darden could be some solid number twos on a lot of teams, and they're going to be fighting for the number 4 spot on this roster. So really difficult for them to get a game time here. Don't love the fit, but I love the player and I love the potential he has.
Yeah, for sure. There's also Scotty Miller there, as you said, Tyler Johnson, and then Godwin was tagged, right?
He got the tag.
Yeah, he got the tag, so we'll see in a year. But moving on, KJ Britt, linebacker from Auburn in the 5th round. Then the 7th round, they took Chris Wilcox, a cornerback from BYU, and Grant Stewart, a linebacker from Houston. So, anything to say about these 3 picks?
Nothing in particular. I don't have a lot of research on either of them. So let's get straight into this with some overall draft grades. Let's start off with the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to give them a B-. How about you?
Yeah, definitely not in the A's. The only pick that I really liked was Frank Darby, and that's a 7th round pick, so we don't know how much he's going to contribute. I think that judging off of Pitts, Grant, Mayfield, Darby, I'll be a little bit nicer, give it a B.
Let's go on to the Carolina Panthers. It's good. You have to really nail your first round pick to get an A+, but B+ for them. They nailed everything after that. I thought this was a really solid draft for them. If they just traded back to number 14, this would have been an A+ for certain.
Yeah, definitely on the A- side for me. So, very good draft from Carolina. And they're slowly building up a young but relatively deep team filled with a lot of good assets. So, definitely very good draft for Carolina. New Orleans, what would you say here?
It's gotta be a C+ for me. You gotta just the fact that you don't like the 2nd round pick. Your 3rd round pick's probably gonna be your 2nd starting corner. The fact you didn't address that in the 1st round with some pretty solid options out there like Kelvin Joseph or Eric Stokes or Asante Samuel Jr. So, didn't love the values, the fits. A little bit of an interesting draft. Paul City was going to be your best player immediately, best contributor. Paul City was a good pick. I just think they just got really unlucky in the situations that they were dealt. And the fact that the board didn't break in their favors and a lot of their guys were drafted right in front of them. Like Terrence Marshall or Caleb Farley. So I think they just got unlucky with the board and they panicked instead of trying to keep their composure. And maybe should have traded back would have been an optimal option for them, even if they didn't get the great value. Just trying to regroup and try and collect their thoughts and probably still getting the same players that they would have selected at the picks they got. So I'll give it a C+.
Yeah, and then Tampa Bay, I'd have to give it a B- too. Besides Darden, there were no picks that I really, really liked here. So I would have to give the same grade as New Orleans. I'd give it a B+. Or B-.
Same logic for me. I'd have to give them a C+. Same reasons, kind of same philosophy in their draft room. Defensive line, bit of a reach in the first. Drafted the quarterback that's not going to play this season on a team that's trying to win games now. And then just one player, but not going to do too much. And it was a late round pick in Jalen Darden. So kind of the same boat for them. So overall, Carolina looks like the big winner of the NFC South.
Yeah, that's something you don't really hear every day. Last time I heard that was
2015. Yeah, 2015.
But looks like Carolina won the division in terms of drafting. There are definitely some better drafts out there that we will cover later on, but that will wrap it up. My name is Ishan Sheth. Alongside me, as always, William Ezel. And that's today's episode of the Triple Threat Podcast.
Low gang for life.
Yeah. Peace.